Okay, so today we are going to study textual variation. Textual variation is how text may vary in different scenarios, and what are the different reasons because of which the text is different. So we have the very important factor of register over there, that is the register factors. If you have what do you mean by the register factors? Register is comprising of basically three elements. One is field, second is tenor, and the third is mode. So there are several elements which contribute to the register, but um, it occurs in field. It encompasses field, tenor, and mode. Now, in what is field? Field is the social setting and purpose of the interaction and includes the subject matter and purpose of the article. It can be verbal, it can be the written text as well. Like uh, what is the setting in which this article or this text or this conversation is produced. Then is the relationship between the participants. Whatever is produced in a specific scenario, what is the relationship between two people, that is two or more than two people who are communicating. As I've told you before as well, that it is not necessary that participants are present in front of you. For example, if you're writing a novel, so the participant is not there, or the only participant is the writer, and the participants who are to whom you are addressing, you are not sure how many participants are there and who are they. So then we have mode. Mode is the medium of communication. That is, how do you communicate, whether it's spoken, whether it's written, whether it's text, or you sending an email. This also determines like mm, as a forensic evidence. Mode can also be considered as forensic evidence when it comes to textual variation. Okay. Field or text type. I would suggest, if you can keep your books in front of you, it's on page number 62. The books are already given to you in the beginning of the semester, so that we can refer to the exercises on the same page. So let's come towards page number 62, field text type. So field we have already discussed, the social setting and purpose of the interaction. Why you are communicating, like what is the social setting, and why you are communicating with someone. That is field. A potentially important duality within a text or between two texts is that of text type. Now, what is duality? Duality is when you have in one text you have two different ideas. That is duality. It can be based on two different thoughts. It can be based on two different um, text types. It can be that is genre, the way the person is saying something. It can be two different ideas as well. It is considered that if two texts are by the same person, then there may be significant stylistic differences between them if they are of different text types. So, and because field deals with the social setting, so let me give you example. If I'm talking to my parents in a social setting, it's a different social setting. I'm talking to my parents. My communication is going to be different. It is going to be a different text type as compared to the same communication that is occurring um, uh, at someone's else place, or maybe outside my home, or inside my home, or um, or somewhere in the market. So the text type which is created is dependent on the way you are, like what is the social setting. So it is possible that the same author um, may produce two different text types, right? In two different settings. If you look at the excerpt over here in exercise 5.1, here are two excerpts from written document by the same police officer. Discuss the similarities and differences between these two excerpts. To assist you in this task, look at the police statements in the forensic text section, which is towards the end, 5.1. However, you don't have it, so let's just only read these. I am 38 years of age and I have completed 14 years police service in XYZ police. Now, if you look at these, read these two uh, excerpts and analyze these two, it is written by the same person, right? The following are two texts. It is written by the same person. However, the um, the 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 differences, if you analyze the differences, both are completely different from one another. It seems as if it is written by two different people. Now, um, why is it that it seems that it is written by two different people? Is because of the field. Is because one, see, if you read this one and the second one, you'll find both of them very different because uh, because one seems to be a bit, organized. See, my role, my priorities. The other is completely different because two different settings automatically will produce two different text types. The following are two text excerpts from a 16-year-old male. The first is a suicide note, and the second appears to be some thoughts about suicide in a kind of poetic format found in one of the youth's school exercise books. Except 5.3. Well, I don't really know what to write except for I'm either going to kill myself tonight or have one final day at school and a final chance to see whatever is the name tomorrow, having a fag at the moment. Thinking about Friday, if you see this about, there is double T, which is going to come ahead in, further topics. We are going to study that. Friday morning, police, when they phoned me up and I really did shit myself. I was just glad though that whatever is the name was sat there with me, was sat there with me. Look at these grammatical mistakes. Now come towards excerpt 5.4. I tried to stay positive, but I lost to negativity, hanging from the apple tree, dead, cold, wet, blowing around in the wind. If you see the differences and analyze these differences, these two excerpts are um, different. Why are they different? One is written in a different scenario, in a different setting, because the purpose of the person is actually to commit suicide. However, the second is given as a setting in the classroom where the student is asked to, write something about suicide, or something about like how would you write a suicide note. So if you if if god forbid someone is committing suicide and that person is writing a suicide note, on the same person, when asked by a teacher to write a suicide note just for the class assignment, would be completely different. So in these two different settings, the field is different and it may create, two different text types. And this is where the textual variation comes in, because then for the forensic linguist, it is difficult to analyze whether the text type is actually written by the same person or or someone else. So you have to look at, the intricacies of the text, which we are going to talk about it towards the end. Okay, register mixing. Now, what is register mixing? Mixing of register in a text. We've already talked about register. How how do you mix to register? Variation caused by mixing of register highlights the possibilities such as dual authorship, plagiarism, or imitation. The concept of register mixing appears contrary to the current theories of register. Now, why it seems contrary to the current theories of register? Because current theory of register says that your field, tenor, and mode decides what would be your text type. How would you write something? That is, field is the social setting. So what is the social setting? Why are you writing something? Tenor would be the relationship between the participants, and mode would be the medium of communication. So these all, when are similar, so your register would be similar. However, there are certain cases where where people mix the register, and it leads to it, and it is because of the dual authorship, or it is because of plagiarism, or it is because of imitation. For example, when you are copying from someone, or when you are trying to write a research paper and you take reference and you are paraphrasing it, automatically your brain works in a way that you copy certain words from the person who is actually who has written the original text. So you would copy it. So when you are um, psychologically, you cannot control it. It can be because of plagiarism, or you are imitating someone, or it can be because of the a dual authorship. Dual authorship means that you have uh, two people are sitting together and they have written it. So, for instance, if you have done your assignment with the help of someone else, there is a possibility that the register would be mixed register. You can read the exercise 5.2. Even the explanation is giving after that, and it would make sense to you. What do I want to um, communicate, or what do I want to say, right? Okay. Tenor, or which is writer and addressee relationship. Now, many relationship factors of varying significance can cause minute changes in style. If you look at this 5.3 two excerpts. Excerpt 5.6. Thank you for all your care and concern for me. I have been on this medication for a long time now and still do not seem to be any better. Therefore, I have decided to end my life. Excerpt 5.7. After almost a year, I don't seem to be getting any better on the medication. I am still afraid to go out and can't drive the car. Therefore, I have decided to take these matters into my own hands. These two excerpts, right, are written like two short excerpts from two suicide notes written by the same person to two different people. If you look at these two excerpts, that is suicide notes, you would not believe that it is written by the same person. The reason is that it is dependent on the addresser and the addressee's relationship. What is the kind of relationship that they share with one another? And it would change your communication. It would lead to the different choice of words, different choice of clauses and sentences, where your text type would be different. That is, the textual variation would be there. So you have to keep this in your mind. You can read the next example. It is almost the same kind of example. However, they have explained how to, explain or the differences. That is in these are the two emails. That is excerpt 5.8 and 5.9. The first excerpt is in conventional, reasonably formal language with conventional capitalization, punctuation, and orthography. In the second text, the author appears to be writing to someone with whom he is familiar in an informal style. Sentence and proper noun capitalization are unconventional, and there are a number of typographical errors, uh, just like you people commit. Mm, though you people write formal, but you commit those mistakes. That's what we are going to discuss um, in the coming sections. Okay, what is context? You all know what is context. Context may bring a lot of change in what you are writing. So it may bring textual variation in what you normally write. All factors apart from the text, if kept constant, may also bring change. So if you say we have the same author, we have the same addressee, we have the same topic, but the context is different, so your text is going to be different. The end result is going to be completely different. You can come to the example that is given, except 5.1 and except 5.11. Read these examples and you'll get to know how how this context is different in or brings variation in text. You can read these. See, the first excerpt appears to be informal, even though it is a job application, and the author writes as though his addressee would be aware of his activities, including the fact that he has made the odd cup of tea. In the second excerpt, that he's explaining that some of the people who interviewed him had prior knowledge of him, and you can read these two excerpts and it would be clear to you. Okay, mode and other factors. As we have already discussed, what is mode? Mode is the medium of communication, whether you are communicating through written, through spoken, through text, through email. What is your medium of communication? It's handwritten, it's typed. Every thing adds to the textual variation. So when you are writing, it like it's handwritten, your text would be different as compared to when you are speaking it. Your text would be different, so it would bring textual variation. Keeping all the things constant and change the mode, that is spoken or written or email or application, and your communication and the text would change as well. Okay, so the difference of style reflected duality of authorship or duality of mode, or whether it is indicative of the text having been edited. Okay, now the problem for the forensic linguists is when they are analyzing any text where the rest of the things are common but mode is different. So they need to know whether it is whether the difference of the style is due to the duality of the authorship, that is it is written by two different people. It can be indicative of that. For instance, you have written something and I have received a written text from someone as well as a recorded audio from someone. When I'm looking or analyzing it, so the problem is whether it is written by two different people, that is the audio is sent by someone else and written text is is written by someone else, or which is actually, or is it because of the duality mode, that is one is written and one is spoken, which will automatically bring difference in the text type. You have to keep this thing in your mind. Or is it because the text is edited? Now, why the text is edited? Because when you're writing, it's very obvious that your text would be edited. Or let's suppose you have written something and then you have sent it to someone and you have asked the person that look into it, whether you find any mistake, or you find anything very harsh, or you find anything inappropriate, or mm, something that you want to alter, or something that you want to change. So you have to look for that. And when the person changes it, it's very obvious that it can be duality of the authorship, or it can be indicative of this fact that the text has been edited. Okay. Non-register factors. Now, so far we studied about the register factors, that is mode, tenor, and field. And now coming towards the non-register factor. What is the non-register factor? Now, the non-register factors are consideration of variety of factors that can impact on individual variability. Now, it depends on individual's variability, which automatically will produce different texts. An individual goes through neurological and neurolinguistic development as well as decay. Now, it may happen that any individual is going through a change. We all know that every individual is going through a change throughout his or her life. When an individual goes through any neurological or neurolinguistic change. And now, neurolinguistic change can be development in the change, or it can be decay in the change. When it comes to development, what is meant by development? New words are adding. You're learning new pronunciation. You're correcting your pronunciations. You're correcting yourself. Decay can be you're forgetting certain vocabulary. We come to the neurological and social changes. Okay, so what is neurological and social changes, and why social changes is with the neurological change? Because neurological changes are attached to the social changes. You learn language because of the social changes occurring in the society. Neurological changes can be permanent or can be temporary, and they can bring a change in the like it can contribute to variation in individual use of language, and it can be temporary or it can be permanent. Temporary is when it can it is because of the brain, it is because of the brain has got brain states as in inebriation, or the influence of drugs, which is called the influence of drugs. It can be because of any kind of medication, any kind of drugs, that is narcotics or even medications. Like, for example, if you are taking antidepressants, or if you are if you are taking any kind of drugs, for example marijuana, or you might have seen uh, people who are very alcoholic. So these kind of things may bring neurological changes in any individual. It can also be mental illness. Mental illness, any kind of mental illness, uh, it can be temporary, and sometimes can be permanent as well. And we also have stroke, which is sometimes debatable, because in stroke we have three kinds. It can bring temporary change, it can bring permanent change, or it can um, bring change, but you can recover some aspects. However, some aspects may not be recovered. So it sometimes it may affect your linguistic abilities to 50% or 70%, and you may recover 20 and 30%. So it is debatable that it's sometimes permanent, or it's sometimes sometimes temporary. But why do we keep this thing in our mind in textual variation? Because if you are comparing a text of someone who has been through a stroke, you cannot blame the person, because the text might be completely different from what he or she has written before the stroke. So if you are comparing a text of someone from 6 or 7 years back, it would be significantly different as compared to the text that they have written 6 years back or now. So it would be different. Okay, coming towards heteroglossia. Bakhtin conceived of two forces acting on individuals in their use of language. What are those two forces? That two forces are centripetal forces and centrifugal forces, which can be on the at the level of code as well. So centripetal forces works to make things coherent, right? Um, for example, you can relate this to the accommodation theory as well, which is your assignment. That is, when you are communicating, if you keep all the things constant and you are making things coherent with that, the text was going to be different. And when it is centrifugal forces, so centrifugal forces is to keep things apart, right? That is why we have social changes attached with it, which are non registered factors. Okay. um and at the level of code, what is meant by at the another level is the is it is between the language at the level of code, that is a level of prescribed meaning and the level of discourse. If you're using a word, it has certain meaning, that is prescribed meaning, which is not in a specific context, which is not related to the discourse. So prescribed meaning is when you are looking at the dictionary meaning of a certain word, and discourse meaning is can be completely different or can be uh, same as well. So this also bring variation in the individual's language. Coming towards competence and performance, you all know what is competence and performance. Variation can be related to the individual's performance or competence. As we all know that every individual's competence may vary from the other, and performance would eventually be different as well. Now, when we look at the competence and performance of every individual, even keeping the tenor, mode, and that is all the aspects of register constant, still the competence and performance may bring changes in the text. So textual variation may occur because of competence and performance as well. um, Repeated and systematic error is because of competence. If you are committing the same kind of mistakes again and again, it means that there is some kind of error in the competence, and it can be identified because if a forensic linguist is analyzing a text or analyzing a conversation, if you look into that conversation and you find repeated and systematic errors in the communication, then you can lead to the conclusion that the text is the authorship of a certain person or certain individual, because there are repeated and systematic errors. However, and maybe because of performance as well, for instance fatigue or poor health. But if that error is repeated almost everywhere, then it may not be because of fatigue and poor health. However, you may commit mistakes. It's common because you are very tired, or because you don't have a good health, or you're not in a healthy state. Maybe that's why or maybe you are tensed at that moment. If, for example, I ask you certain question and um, you were under some kind of pressure, it's very obvious that your text would be different from the normal text. Okay. Spellings can present variation. That is, spellings like, can be of different types. with whether it is like you're doubling the final letter, or if you remember, I just quoted that we are going to talk about this doubling of the letter, and I gave you the example from excerpt 5.3, that in excerpt 5.3, thinking about, this about is written in with double T. So it may happen that your writing may uh, uh, maybe the final letter is repeated, or there is doubling of the letter in the mid, or for example identical letters as are considered as single. For example, accommodate with ACCOMODATE, or ACCO so it may vary, like with this double M is considered as single M by the writer, by any individual. Spelling system appears to be occasionally unstable, therefore we cannot rely on the spellings all the time when it comes to analysis. Therefore you have to keep other things in your mind. Please read page number 70 in order to have insight into what it actually is, competence and performance, though you already know about competence and performance, but just to have a little more knowledge about it. Okay. um, Polyphonic factors. Now what is uh, polyphony? Is adopted by Bakhtin and Kristeva, which means the way in which an individual's language is influenced by other speaker and writers. Now, what does it mean? It means, okay, if you are if for example I'm using a language and someone is sitting in front of me and the person has already asked me a question in a certain sequence, the answer that I'm going to give is going to be the same, or I'm going to repeat the same thing, as we already discussed in heteroglossia, or or for example because of the plagiarism or because of the translation, it may happen. For instance, I asked you a question, how are you doing? So if you ask me again a question and you answer it, that is, I'm fine, how are you doing? So this how are you doing is repeated because I have asked you in that way. Therefore this polyphonic factor is evident here, because the way I ask a question or the way I pose a question, you are going to pose the question or give the answer in the same way. So the elements of that question or the elements of that conversation or words are going to be repeated by you. So polyphony is actually the way in which an individual's language is influenced by other speakers and writers. It can cause homogenization as well as variation between writers. Now the question is that what is the problem there? The polyphonic factor brings variation, but it can bring variation in two aspects. The first is homogenization, means the writer whom you are influenced from, you are bringing the same element. You two are bringing the same elements in your conversation, and it would seem as if the authorship is of the same person. Now it is bringing homogeneity over there, but it may also bring variation between the writers as well. Now how it will bring variation between the writers? Because two writers are writing something and they have something in their mind that they're not supposed to copy one another. Like you people are, like for example, you people are doing assignment together and you say that if we are writing the same things, ma'am would feel that we have copied it from one another. So what you do is you intentionally bring changes in the draft. You are actually bringing changes in the draft, and that is why the right it is bringing variation between the writers as well. Okay, you have all of you have studied intertextuality, heteroglossia, and accommodation. So polyphony is related to heteroglossia, polyphony is related to intertextuality, and polyphony is intertextuality you have studied in detail in CDA. And you also know about accommodation theory, convergence and divergence. So it can be because of that as well. Polyphony occurs in plagiarism and in translations as well. Uh, for example, when we translate something, we get to know in the background that you know there is variation or there is homogeneity in between the the authors. For example, if you're translating something from Pashto to English, we know that you are a Pashto speaker because only in Pashto you have certain sentences. Or if you are an Urdu speaker and you are translating it to English, so we have those glimpses within the text that it has some you know it has this text has some influence from it, influence of of your first language or whichever language you are translating from. um, Acquisition process. Why acquisition process is important? As I just talked about your first language, so acquisition process is very important to bring variation in each individual. So if let's suppose there's a problem of authorship about a text, and we want to know who has written it. So how would you different and there are 3 or 4 possible suspects. How would you know that it is written by that one individual? Mm, your acquisition process may help in that, or all the previous aspects that we have studied may also help in analyzing it. So how acquisition process help and bring textual variation? uh, it is the earliest source of language in which we encounter in infancy and childhood, and later in the education system. So first encounter of the language is um, uh, from the parents, right, in the beginning, and you are influenced by that. And then later in the education system, you are exposed to the language. Now, in early stages, polyphony works through language of adults, caregivers, and other children, what Christiva calls semiotic stage. However, there is symbolic stage as well. So, semiotic stage is where the children are influenced by the language of adults, by the language of caregivers, and by the language of other children. So you learn from that. For instance, um, no one is going to teach you swear words, but you learn it from somewhere. How do you learn it? You acquire those words from maybe adults or from surroundings. Okay, symbolic is used as a reference to the language of signs and symbols. To the language of signs and symbols, that is, like you imitate and you imitate your elders. So signs and symbols and all these are related to symbolic. You also learn symbolic language as well. Detective filter theory. What is detective filter theory? Well, with symbolic, you learn it through imitation and repetition, and all these things help in um, acquiring a language and acquiring other things related to the language, like sign and symbols. Okay, what is detective filter theory? Detective filter theory is that memories which, like for example, there is a certain memory which has threatened you in your childhood. So any theory, which has threatened the individual, are normally filtered out of consciousness, consciousness, and it will help in identifying the uh, uh, the criminal. Um, Echolalia is the thought by some commentators to be part of creative process in poetry, possibly as the part of the uh, search of identity. Now, um, you might have watched certain, dramas, or these detective dramas or movies in which there is some childhood trauma, because of which a child, later in uh, later in their life, becomes criminal and commits commits crime, or or turn out to be a serial killer. In that scenario, you might have seen that there is a certain poem, or a certain rhythmic words, some poetical words that they repeat when they are trying to commit a murder. In that case, we have a detective filter theory, which is the which states that there are certain memories in your mind which attach certain bad memories, which attach themselves to the subconscious and would never leave you, and would be, evident in the textual variation. So that's how you get to know. I am going to share a link with you all of a mm, of a, you can say, a YouTube link, where you will understand, though it's not a completely a detective case or detective filter theory, but you'll get to know how those childhood trauma may bring those those memories, bad memories, which are there in your subconscious, to the conscious, and may lead to identification of the criminal. You have already studied what is intertextuality, so please read 5.14 example, and you'll get to know what is intertextuality, as well as this example also helps you um, uh, uh, to understand how this polyphony works, because in this example it's stated that when you have these two, officer 1 and officer 2, they have repeated the same structures again and again, so it is evident that they might have copied it from one another. So the polyphony is there, they are influenced from one another. Though please read intertextuality with these two examples, and it will be clear to you. Thank you.